I'm Professor Brad Lettner, and this is video 3 out of 3 in our series, The Speaker's Toolbox. So we've covered tell them, how to give your speech organization. We've covered your speech as an arrow in order to remember that your main purpose of your speech is to drive your thesis, the point, into the audience so that they remember it. Finally, we're going to use say what, so what, and now what. This is not the most basic tool. This tool will help give your speeches meaning, will help your audience remember your speeches, and will help you take public speaking seriously as a responsibility, even in a class like this. Once you have your audience's attention, even for 5 minutes, don't waste the opportunity. So let's get started. Say what. What you say is incredibly important. As you cover in your reading, your credibility depends that, one, you research the things you're going to say. You just don't wing it and say that the population of the United States is 100 million. Well, the population of the United States is more like 400 million. It's much, much higher than 100 million. So if you're going to use any facts, any figures, any quotes, it's very, very important that what you say is true, that what you say can be researched and confirmed. Especially in my previous example, I used a car as an example, knowing full well that I'm not a great mechanic. I'm not a car guy. That had the danger of me misspeaking, saying something that was not correct, and losing that portion of the audience that knew for sure that what I said wasn't right. So again, whether it's a population figure, whether it's a quote from a famous person, if you're using facts, use them correctly. Many, many years ago, many television shows, in fact, popular culture, if someone said something that people doubted was correct, they would come back with, say what? And basically they're saying, is that true? Are you crazy? Are you really telling me the truth? Say what? When I'm giving a speech, I try to hear that question in the back of my mind. Am I telling the truth? Can I prove it? Can it be researched? So say what you say, incredibly important. Second, so what? I think you still understand so what? Somebody says something. And if it means nothing to you, if you really don't care about that topic, if you don't say it out loud in your brain, you think, so what? Big deal. Why should I care? An important part for you when you make a speech, your target audience, your audience analysis, will they care about what I'm going to tell them? When you're giving a speech about informing the audience, pick a topic that's important. Pick a topic that's interesting, or pick a topic that's fun. Either way, most of us like learning about things that are important, things that are interesting, and almost all of us enjoy having fun. Now, it could be, because this is an introductory speech class, it could be that your hobby is a hobby that most people won't really have familiarity with or care that much about. Let's say it's crochet. I crochet. In fact, I don't even crochet with yarn like my daughters do, because then you can actually make, sweaters and blankets and useful things. I was taught to crochet by my grandmother with string, and she made doilies, just little round lace string things that you would put on a dresser and then put a lamp on top of it. It really has no purpose. The things that you make are not that valuable, but it was a way that she passed down to me to relax. I've heard that the football player, Rosie Greer, played many, many years ago. He knitted. Big, giant football player, 300 pounds, 6'5", and he'd be sitting in the airplane going to a game, and he'd be knitting socks, knitting blankets, and people would make fun of him. Crocheting by itself, not so very interesting. But as I share those examples of how I learned it from my grandmother, you think, oh, well, that's kind of nice that that the grandmother would pass that down to generations. When I talk about a football player and you put that word picture in your mind of a big 6.5 foot tall, 300-pound football player with knitting needles sitting in his chair, then again, it makes it a little fun. So when you pick a target, go with so what? How can I make it interesting? How can I make it fun? How can I make it important? Finally, now what? You've given your speech and it's been about some topic that you found that should be important to you and you want the audience to understand it. Give them something to do with it. That's the now what. Now what do I do? If you tell them about a recipe, give them a now what. You can find this recipe online here, or you can try this recipe at this restaurant. And that now what takes the things that you said, gives them a action they can take. And believe me, after you hear a speech, if you never do anything about it, it won't take very long before you forget what was in that speech. But if I give you an action to take, a now what, it sticks in your mind. And the things that you do reinforce. So you may not remember the speech, but you'll always remember that recipe if you actually try it and love it. Whereas if you just heard about it, pretty soon you'd forget you'd ever heard about it. And so that wraps up our 3 tools in our Speaker's Toolbox. We started with tell them, tell them, tell them. And I want you to apply that to every speech you give in our class. Tell me what you're going to tell me. Give me an introduction that lays out your main points, and then make your main points, and then tell me what you told me. In your conclusion, wrap it up and remind me. Speech is an arrow. I'll be looking for that in every one of your speeches. What was your thesis? What was your main point? And did your points 1, 2, and 3 line up? Were they strong and were they a straight line behind your main thesis? And did you have the fletching? The little stories, the facts, the figures, the quotes that make it interesting and helps that speech fly. And then finally, say what, so what, now what. You'll feel that. I don't grade very heavily. To me, that's advanced speech making, and this is really speech 101. This is basics. But I want you to begin to think about and I will grade this. What you say needs to be factually correct. What you say should carry some interest for the audience. You should create an environment where you can give the audience the interest. And then finally, and this is for extra credit, if your speech can give people a now what, something they can do with that information. So I hope you've enjoyed the Speaker's Toolbox. This will be your discussion basics, because most of us don't have our textbooks yet, for week 2 in your syllabus and online in Canvas. So we'll see you in our next email. We'll see you in our Zoom classes that are starting this week in week 2.